Arkansas 20, Texas A&M 10 at Jerry's World in Dallas. We got Andrew Hattersley on the line from Gig'em 247 Sports, as we typically do after every Texas A&M game to deliver our post game. But we thought we'd tag team it tonight. I watched every play of the game, but Andrew's right there at the game and just came from the post game podium with Jimbo Fisher and players. Andrew, how we doing?
Yeah, battled my way out of traffic. So sorry, this was a couple minutes later than we usually do. I found a nice little park to sit over here. Yeah, obviously, this was one I think Arkansas had A&M's full attention coming in, and they jumped on him pretty quickly. And that was something that was brought up after the game, that the focus has to be there from the very beginning. You got to be locked in, and they just had a couple breakdowns and put themselves out of. They just put themselves too far behind by the start of the second half, and just the game was controlled by Arkansas.
Yeah, where do we start on this one? We'll start with kind of playing off what you just said. It did appear as though you would think, based on what we know about the two teams, and even though Arkansas has exceeded expectations to date, that Texas A&M would have an advantage up front, especially on the defensive side against Arkansas's offensive line. And it seemed that while Texas A&M's defense played a much better second half, early in the game they were getting pushed around.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, it was an issue that popped up against Kent State earlier this year. Thought they rushed lanes. They got out of their rush lanes a little bit. They lost their eye discipline, which you can't do against Arkansas because they've got so many misdirection plays and quarterback reads, and I thought that was an area that Texas A&M really struggled early on in the game. They just allowed too many runs, gave up too many runs up the middle, especially. They locked in during the second half, and I think they're still trying to find consistency. You've got to be able to play that way for a full 60 minutes, and they're not there at this point, and there were just penalties and undisciplined plays that ended up just being too much to overcome.
Absolutely, and one of the plays that really got Arkansas rolling from a scoring standpoint was, of course, the Treylon Burks play down the sideline against, I think that was against Jalen Jones, correct?
Miles Jones. Yeah, that was Miles Jones. Yeah,
Miles Jones.
Yeah. Well, credit to Arkansas, because I thought that was one thing that they did early in the first half was they had Treylon Burks outside the numbers quite a bit and were able to isolate him. He had a huge half. I think he had like 160 yards in the first half. So he was just a massive, massive problem. Talked about him earlier in the week about the problems that he caused, and they got him in space. They got him in great situations to get him the ball. Obviously, he just flat out beat Miles Jones down the sideline for that touchdown. And then I thought A&M's tackling of him was terrible in the first half. We had that one play with Aaron Hansford almost, kind of pushing them, but that was on another Arkansas player. But just the tackling, I thought they struggled to bring him down, and his speed was just a big factor in the game.
Yeah, that was a play by A.J. Green coming out of the backfield in receiver for Arkansas. And it was just a strange play to watch on TV. And you obviously got a great look at it, that he juked a guy. He also made another tackler miss that kind of spun him around. And then Hansford must have just, I don't know,
tried to push him out of bounds, I think.
Yeah, pushed him out of bounds, or thought he was pushing him in the other direction or something, but he actually gave him more momentum to just as soon as he made that push, it was like, oh, he's gone.
Well, I thought that was one of the weird things is when you think about it, like for A&M, it was some of the veteran players that made those undisciplined plays and mistakes, and I jumping off sides on plays and missed tackles, and that play where not being aware if you're inbounds or out of bounds, and how close you are to the sideline. And it was one of those things. And then, credit to Arkansas. We knew coming in that offensive line, they really controlled up front. KJ Jefferson gave A&M a lot of problems early, both with his legs and with his arm. And that's what we talked about is, with who was going to be able to make plays with their arms. And it was KJ Jefferson, and he really made a big statement.
We got Andrew Heddersley on the line, as we always do, talking Texas A&M football. Andrew was reporting on the game for Gig'em
Yeah.
247 Sports. Arkansas, Texas A&M, one of the great rivalries in the SEC. And, of course, Arkansas continues this surprising run here. They came in number 16 in the polls. I had them at number 7. They go to 4-0. Texas A&M falls to 3-1. And obviously, this is a huge step in the conference race here. It's just kind of strange not to break it out to a big over the top narrative, but we talk all season about these games, or during the off season, we have so much anticipation for these games, and because of what Texas A&M accomplished last year, so many people just looked at it and thought, okay, circle Alabama, they'll be undefeated when they take on Alabama. And I don't know if you had a chance because you've been so locked in on that game, but it's just been another crazy day of college football. Minnesota lost as a 31-point favorite. Clemson lost again. Auburn almost
struggled.
lost to
Yeah.
Georgia State. They should have lost that game. A number of crazy things around college football. Like, we can't be looking past anybody.
Yeah, and it's just one of those weird seasons in college football where there's no. I mean, even Alabama last week kind of struggled against when they had Florida, kind of up 21-3 and let go of the rope a little bit. There's just so much inconsistency and parity. And Arkansas, one of the things you have to give them credit for is they just are believing in Sam Pittman. They're playing really hard. They know what we came in talking about, how they know what they are, and they know what they're good at, and that's I think a big reason they've been playing as well as anybody in the country so far this year.
If you guys have a question or comment for myself or for Andrew, just leave it here in the live chat. Obviously, people are very excited about the Arkansas win. Those Hawks fans.
I think this is a good one to kind of jump off on just how does this team get better from here.
Yep.
I think it starts up front, frankly, and at this point you can say Zach Calzada, and I believe me, I think there's certain things from this game that make you concerned when it comes to Zach Calzada, but up front, they were just under pressure all day, and it was a lot of the veteran guys. On that last sack, Kenyon Green got beat out of tackle. They lost Jameer Johnson early in the game. Had Blake Traynor in there for one series at left tackle, and that was not going to work. So they moved him to right guard and tried putting Kenyon Green out of left tackle. And they just haven't been able to find consistent play up front. And they had to replace a lot of guys coming into the year, and they haven't been good up front. They're not getting a push with the running game, and that's been a big problem through 4 games. And we kind of said coming into the year, what's going to happen when conference play comes around, and we'll get a better idea of this team. And I think the offensive line's a big concern going forward. And I think the problem they have, obviously there's receivers that need to help Zach Calzada more, but he's just struggling to read the game. There were open receivers today that he just wasn't able to hit, and I think with time he'll become more poised. But too often it felt like he was just trying to get out of the pocket and kind of panicking a little bit, and just didn't play with poise, and that kind of forces your offensive scramble as well. But you got to play with poise, and it starts at the quarterback position. And I didn't think he was very poised in the first half.
Yeah. What you just said right there at the end about the first half, I think he played much better. He started making some really nice throws in the second half, but it obviously wasn't enough at that point. Not that they were hopelessly behind by any stretch, but it really took him a long time to get into the flow of the game and start to make some throws that he's capable of making.
Yeah, the weird thing to me about this game too is, so you had late in the third or early in the fourth quarter, A&M's defense was really rolling. It felt like a little bit of, the Colorado game in a certain way of, just how the defense continued to make stops and all that. And then there's that 21-yard pass to Anais Smith down the left sideline, and then the pick one play later. And you kept saying, if it doesn't turn the ball over, they'll have a chance at the end. And that pick just kind of felt like the moment that all wins were taken out of the sails because you were just coming off the big run by Isaiah Spiller, and to throw it off your center's helmet and have it bounce up in the air. I mean, that was just a costly mistake that you can't make.
Well, Andrew, I got to say, when Calzada made the throw before that you just mentioned, then made the pick, I was thinking of you because I was thinking of many, many conversations that we had in leading into this season, and not having watched Calzada a lot myself, especially since he wasn't the starter this year, and just seeing him in the spring. Obviously, that doesn't count. And just seeing him a little bit once he came in against Colorado, I thought of our several conversations because I thought, I wasn't that impressed with him throughout much of this game. And then he made that throw to
Anaya Smith, I think it was. I think it was Anaya Smith. Yeah.
Anaya Smith. And I thought that's a beautiful throw. He hummed it, but he also had to take a little bit off to drop it over the linebacker. He placed it right in there.
Yeah.
And that was all the way to the sideline throw, and then shows his inconsistency in the very next play, doing what he did and making, to throw a ball off your offensive lineman's helmet. There you go.
It's just that game. It's just that play that ends up changing the game, and it put your defense in a bad spot on inside their own 50-yard line, and they only gave up a field goal. But at 2 scores, it just felt like insurmountable coming into the fourth quarter. But it's just that mistake you can't make in that situation. You've got to be able to protect the ball, and that's one of the reasons they were able to stay in the game, because they hadn't turned the ball over to that point. But Jeff Tarp, who was sitting next to me, we both said, if A&M turns this over once, it's going to be probably over. And that was the play that, to me, kind of swung the game, because at that point A&M had some momentum. Their defense was playing well. They were coming off the big touchdown run to Isaiah Spiller, and that play just can't happen.
Yeah, and to your first point about what you witnessed and about what Jimbo said right out of the gate, it was just so obvious from the first play of the game that Arkansas was sharp and energetic and really took it to them, and that Texas A&M was kind of on its heels from the first play.
Yeah. Well, the first play, you had the big run, I believe, with Traylon Smith right up the middle.
Yeah.
Then you had a big run, I believe, with KJ Jefferson. Before that, you even had another run that was called back for a holding.
Yep.
But still they were just gashing them right up the middle, and they had A&M on their heels. They had to settle for a field goal, and that felt like a big win for A&M. But they come right back with a touchdown down the right hand side, and it really they just took it to A&M. And during the week, it's surprising that A&M wasn't ready to go, because everybody could kind of sense that Arkansas was going to come ready for this game. Jimbo Fisher was asked, I believe, on one of the teleconference calls if he had to guard against his team being overconfident, and he said just turn on the film, and that's all you should need to know to not be overconfident. And thought it was a great point. And A&M, I don't think they were overconfident, but they just came out on their heels, and Arkansas took it to them. And credit to them, they did exactly what they've been doing all year. And again, they know who they are. They know who they are into Sam Pittman, and that's a credit to just the job he's done already.
Get Andrew Heddersley on the line from Gig'em 247 Sports. Always wraps up each and every Texas A&M game for us here at the Voice of College Football with a Texas A&M post-game show. So since I knew I was going to watch this one and that Andrew was at the game, I thought I'd tag team this one with him. Our guy Yakov, Mark, can you do a woo pig suey? Well, in the annals of local news history, there is both a record of me doing a woo pig suey and a Gig'em chant as well. I've done them both at different sporting events and games, but not right now.
Yeah. I do
Tony.
think
What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to read off this question from Tony about Haynes King.
Yeah. Go for it. That's a good question. I think they do because I think he's able to get out of the pocket and make some plays with his
Mm.
legs, and I think that that might have opened things up. I don't think it would be a case of him not being able to make plays or him not turning the ball because I think he certainly could have made a mistake or two as well. So I don't think it comes down to that, but I think just in terms of him being able to open things up with the running game, I think A&M probably does win this game if they have him, but you got to line up with the guys you have, and A&M went into this game confident in Zach Calzada, and he's got to be able to do the job, and he's on scholarship too, and there's a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids on scholarship, and they've got to be able to perform better. Again, it was a lot of the veterans that made mistakes, and that to me that goes to discipline. That goes to what you're doing in practice, being locked in, and it was something that Isaiah Spiller talked about after the game was just being more locked in practice, and this could be a wake up call in that sense.
I'll ask you a question related to what was just asked about whether the Aggies would have won this game with Haynes King at quarterback. I was asked this question a couple hours ago near the end of the game that somebody asked me. They said, Jimbo Fisher is considered this offensive guru, but it doesn't seem like his offenses typically are that great. And when has he produced a great quarterback, running back, wide receiver? So I'll pose that to you, and then I'll let you know what my response was.
Yeah. Well, I think with the we've this has been a conversation all over our message boards all week as well. He runs a complicated scheme um, that's based on precision. It's based on timing. And so it helps when you have a veteran group. But I think we're seeing right now that it's a tough playbook to pick up at times, and it's tough to when you get a young group in there and a young offensive line and young quarterback. Sometimes there can be quite a bit of growing pains. Um, I, his offense is not the most explosive offense in the world, but it's based on being able to run the ball, controlling the time of possession, limiting turnovers, and taking advantage of your opportunities. It's designed to be an efficient offense, not an explosive offense, and we've seen that in the past. There's with guys like when they had Kellen Mond last year, it wasn't necessarily a quote unquote explosive offense, but it was efficient, and didn't beat of itself. And so when you have offensive line you know penalties along the offensive line, false starts, all those things, you beat yourself real quickly. And so that's the way I'd put it is, I know everybody wants to, you know, throw the ball all over the yard, but I think he tries to build a football team and control the line of scrimmage and control the game in that way.
I somewhat made that point, but also made the point in the personnel side of the question or comment, much as what Tony has said here. I said, well, we don't consider Jameis Winston to be a great college quarterback. He won a Heisman Trophy. He's the number one pick in the NFL draft. He won a national championship. Dalvin Cook was, I don't know that you get much better in producing running backs than Dalvin Cook and Devontae Freeman and now Isaiah Spiller. Kellen Mond, I don't know that a lot of people would have considered Kellen Mond an NFL draft pick a couple years ago, and he was what, a third round selection?
I think he went in the third round, yeah. And so, I mean, it's based on it's built on that, like being, he develops quarterbacks. It takes time, and you have to keep in mind this is a guy in his second start, so where he's going to be a couple years down the line. I'm not sure he's necessarily the answer, to be honest with you. I think Haynes King certainly brings a lot more juice to the table, and we'll see when there. I know there's a lot of excitement about Connor Wigman coming in and what he might be able to bring, but your team looks different when you're playing with your backup quarterback, and they just didn't execute well enough tonight.
Andrew, of course, Texas A&M was down early, 17-zip, but there was still so much time in the game. I wouldn't have thought that it would have affected the game plan or the run-pass ratio. So 36 passes out of Calzada and 23 runs, which he made 5. So you got to think some of those runs were called pass plays that turned into runs. Are you pretty comfortable with the run pass ratio, which was about 60 some percent pass?
Well, I think part of that comes from being behind. I think that part of that comes from just trailing and being down 17-0. You of course have to throw the ball. I was surprised that they did not stick with Isaiah Spiller the after the 67-yard touchdown run. I thought I would have come right back to him the next drive. Just the way you had things going on the ground, he was really in the first half. A lot of those runs were a lot of those runs. He made something out of nothing. To be honest with you, I don't think A&M was blocking that well in the first half, and he was able to pick up 3 yards, 4 yards, finding cutback lanes and weaving his way through traffic. And so, I would have stuck with him a little bit more. I think he only finished the game with 12 runs, and Isaiah and Devon Achane finished with 6, I think. And so, but and I think that's the other thing is when Arkansas is playing three-man front like they are, the way to beat that is to run the ball. And A&M just did not run the ball enough, in my opinion. And they kept it in. They didn't keep Zach Calzada in manageable situations, which is something we've talked about quite a bit as well.
We had Chase Lane and Caleb Chapman miss the game. Any other missing players?
Well, Layden Robinson was a guy, I think early in the week there was a thought that he was going to be able to play, and that forced Ruben Fothery to make his first start at. I thought he held up very well. I think this is the second week in a row that he's looked okay, and he's looked good. He's going to make mistakes. He's young, but Texas A&M had two freshmen starting on the offensive line, so that's going to lead to mistakes, and that's going to lead to false starts. And there were a couple bad snaps today, and but yeah, Layden Robinson was out today as well.
Do you think between those three players, how significant do you think those losses were?
For me, I think all three were decently significant in their own ways. I think along the offensive line, I think Layden Robinson certainly would have made an impact. He's still a young player, and we don't know how he would have responded in this sort of environment, but you kind of felt like A&M was one injury away from being in trouble on the offensive line. And I know Jimbo Fisher will say that Blake Traynor has played okay, but I thought he really struggled at times. It put them in a tough spot. So I think getting Layden Robinson back would help. And Chase Lane, I think he's sometimes a guy that goes a little bit unnoticed, but he knows the offense. He knows the timing. He's there on those key third downs and knows where to sit. And as Hezekiah Jones is still out as well. That's a good point. And Luke Matthews as well. But I think Chase Lane and Caleb Chapman would have helped in this game just to bring their veteran presence. But they had other issues as well.
Texas A&M only came up with 272 total yards in this game, which is pretty paltry. 4 of 15 on third and fourth down, so they didn't convert third down. Nope. There was one play that, in the way I describe it, you may not be able to remember the play because I don't even remember the situation, but it was probably early fourth quarter, and it just kind of showed you as Gary Danielson outlined the play, and they had the camera angle from behind the offense, that Zach Calzada didn't have a ton of time, but he had enough time to drop back and then step up in the pocket, and Jalen Weidemeyer was open. He had found a spot in the zone, and he had plenty of clearance. He was right there, boom, squared up, and Calzada just didn't see him, and then he got sacked or kind of hurried out of the pocket, may have gained a yard or something like that. And you could see Weidemeyer's response, and he was frustrated that that the ball didn't come his way, and he had gotten himself open, and it was a key play. It was a third down in which they had to punt.
Well, that's one of those things. Is I think that was one of the problems. Is he has to be able to hang in the pocket, and you have to be able to trust a play and hang in there when things might be breaking down, and I think that was part of the frustration for Jalen Weidemeyer. But Jalen Weidemeyer also dropped a pass on a key third down early in the fourth quarter as well. Um, and we got an ice cream truck going past if anybody needs that.
I didn't know if
Again,
that
yeah,
was the
yeah,
ringtone or
again, yeah, no, we got an ice cream truck going by again.
nice.
For those that are just joining, just found a spot outside AT&T here
You
to,
want to go grab
to
yourself an ice cream?
yeah, I might need an ice
Okay.
cream actually. He's stopping over in this area. But yeah, no, I think that was one of the things is there was so many situations where, he just seemed to get happy feet or flustered in the pocket um, and look to run before when there were things open downfield, and that comes down to poise, that comes down to presence and having confidence, and they were open downfield if he just hung with the play. And to this other question that I noticed on Sworn Robinson play, that was Jameer Johnson that got hurt early in the game, which caused kind of the shuffling along the offensive line. Didn't get an update on him, but that'll be an update that we get later in the later in the week, probably Monday when Jimbo has a chance to meet with the trainers. But yeah, it's just a frustrating day offensively, and they weren't on the same page. And Jimbo has said it a couple times this year, but it's just guys taking turns. Sometimes it's Zach Elzada, sometimes it's the offensive line, sometimes it's receivers, sometimes it's it's the tight ends, and it it just kind of goes all around.
Texas A&M falls to Arkansas 20-10. The Hogs. I got to check their next game. Oh, Georgia,
Yeah.
Arkansas. That should be a good one.
And let me tell you, Georgia better be ready to go because Arkansas is going to be a very, very challenging team to play all year. And if people aren't aware of them now, they need to be, because that might well end up being a top 10 matchup. And I guarantee you, Georgia's going to go in and do the same thing, and they know exactly what they want to do now. And if they're gonna cause problems for a lot of teams this year.
Texas A&M has a date with Mississippi State, who it seems as though, regardless of who they play, it's going to come down to the last minute of play. I think every game has. Louisiana Tech, Memphis, whoever they play. It was LSU today. They got behind early, fought their way back. They got a 2-point conversion to make it 28-25, and almost got a shot to pull it out, but LSU beat Mississippi State today. Somebody had made a comment about KJ Jefferson, so I think his I think
the game, yeah.
He had to leave the game at one point with an ankle. I think it was an ankle.
Yeah.
And
looked like he took a shot on the bench. If I saw correctly, that looked to be the play when he got up kind of limping and looked like he got pushed out of bounds and came up limping.
Malik Hornsby came in. It was pretty obvious that they weren't going to take too many risks with him at quarterback. And obviously at that point, I think it was 17-10.
Yeah.
And so they weathered that storm. It looked like, well, here's going to be an offense that's a bit compromised with somebody that won't be able to give any downfield threat, but they got Jefferson back in the game. And this is just, I think the way that they're utilizing him and running that offense is just a perfect complement to what he does. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not going to carve up a defense or read a defense, but he's an athlete and he's got a strong arm and he hits for big plays.
Yeah, I thought credit to KJ Jefferson. He made enough plays with his arms, and I thought that was a key moment in the game when, he kind of hit that third. That was kind of the dagger, was backed up in their own end, and he hits that third down to keep the drive going and chew a couple more minutes off the clock. That was I thought the moment in the game, and give him credit because everybody had talked about his legs coming in, but yeah, you're right. His ability to make plays with his arm is really, I think gonna help take him to the next level.
Got Andrew Heddersley on the line from 247 Sports. Gig'em 247. Join him and the rest of the staff over there covering Texas A&M football. Andrew's nice enough to give us time each and every week to talk Aggies, and also does our post game show after each and every Aggies game. So please join him each and every week after Texas A&M football. And we're trying to get these post game shows also posted on our Texas A&M channel. So do us all a big favor. Head on over to our Voice of College Football Texas A&M channel. Please subscribe there. We post Texas A&M content over there as well as here, but you get it more concisely and concentrated there on the Texas A&M channel. And we hope to be simulcasting these live post games on the Texas A&M channel to build that up here very soon. I actually tried that again today, Andrew, and it was just shutting me down for some reason. So I don't know what the
for
deal
some
is.
reason it just does not allow us to do it, but we'll get that off the ground. Last game of the season, it'll probably get off the ground and running.
There
right?
You go. I'm going to be on the line with Google here pretty soon. So I've had to do that a few times before. So we'll do it again.
Yeah.
We will do it again.
But
All
yeah,
right.
no, I think really the big thing is just if Arkansas doesn't have folks' attention now, they should, because I think that's a really good football team, and Sam Pittman deserves a lot of credit, because I don't think there were a lot of people screaming great hire when he was hired. Kind of came in quietly. He's gone about his business, and he's really built that into he's built that up faster than I think anybody could have imagined. And he's got them rolling right now, and I think he deserves all the credit in the world for that.
Todd is saying A&M was supposed to be the best defensive line in the league. I think the Hogs can move the ball against Georgia. Will be a great game.
Well, I think the thing that Arkansas does so well, and it's going to stress Georgia just like it did A&M, is their discipline. When you get out of rushing lanes and you get too far up the field on Arkansas, they can give you problems. And if you get over aggressive and you're trying to make a play or getting eager, they're going to give you problems. And I think that's regardless of they force you to play slower in a way. And I think that's schematically that goes back to what Kendall Briles does. They mix in trick plays, they mix in all that, and it's just they've got a really good scheme, and it's tough to stop. And it's why Jimbo Fisher during the week was really concerned about what this defense was, what this offense was going to be able to do under KJ Jefferson, and how locked in his team needed to be.
Manny, I don't know exactly who you're talking to. We typically have on Ty Hudson from the Pig Trail Network to talk Arkansas football. So Trey from HDL. Yeah. If you want me to have a particular person on, you can always email me at markrogerstv@gmail.com if you want to see somebody in particular on as a guest. So just let me know. Mark, Texas A&M stupidity did not counter the fact that their left tackle was getting his lunch eaten and kept the tight end into double the end.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I think he's referring to Jalen Weidemeyer, and he's such a factor in the passing game that you have to be able to. I think he's talking about Trey Biddy. He's with Hawks.
Oh, okay.
Hawk Sports 247.
Okay, we can do that.
That they keep they need Jalen Weidemeyer in the passing game, because that's he's really one of their biggest weapons in the passing game, and so it's tough. I don't know if they go to two tight end sets and bring Taylor Cup or Max Wright to kind of help and chip on that end, but they were kind of trying to do that, and that's something Jimbo Fisher said after the game. They were trying to do that, but it's just a question of what do you take away and what are you given. And I think it just comes back to they have to be able to get the receivers in space more and get more production from that position.
Okay. Anything else here? The Hogs are capable. I can possibly see it playing out similar to Bama, Florida next week.
Yeah, I think they're gonna. I think Arkansas is going to be in every I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm really interested to see, and um, you know, it's just impressive how they've attacked that schedule because they've got the number one most difficult schedule in the country. So it's just been impressive how they've attacked it.
Yeah, so they're still going to have to get through Georgia, Alabama, LSU,
Ole
Mississippi
Miss,
State,
yeah,
Ole Miss, and well, they'll have Mizzou out of the
yeah,
East as well. Will be their other
um,
game there.
yeah. But they'll definitely be they'll be somebody that's going to be in the factor in the rest of the year.
Yeah, you would think so. It looks like it. Sam Pittman's got it going there at
Yeah, for A and
Arkansas.
M, it's a question of how do you rebound now because they haven't suffered a loss since the Alabama game and the second game of last year. So you've got to bounce back. And Mississippi State next week, Alabama, and you know I've heard that a lot this year about the rebuilding, and but I think you still want to see when Nims in year four of Jimbo Fisher now, they're trying to be a consistent contender. And so, by rebuilding, they can't have like a 6-5 or 6-7-5 year, but they need to be in the 8-4, 9-3 range just for recruiting purposes to keep that up. You need to be 9-3, 10-2 to really keep that momentum and continue just building on the offensive line, building at the quarterback position, and just stick with it.
Well, James, this is college football this year, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to see. A&M barely squeaked by Colorado. Colorado turns around. Minnesota crushes them, just barely. They can't get a yard, and then Minnesota turns around as a 31-point favorite today. They lose to Bowling Green.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this, like just looking at take Florida State for example. They go in the first week of the year and play a fantastic game against Notre Dame, and then fall flat on their face the next 3 weeks. And then Notre Dame, we're kind of having questions about with we're kind of having questions about they come back with a huge win today over Wisconsin. I mean, that's just how this kind of works right now.
Yeah, I watched that game as well. Impressive showing out of Notre Dame. Now, it wasn't a typical 41-13 game. It was like 17-13 with like 6 minutes left in the game. I don't know what happened when they scored to make it 24-13, it was pretty much like, okay, this game's over. There's like 3 minutes left. I don't know how they got all those more. They must have been throwing pick sixes left and right. But regardless, it was a really good game. But yeah, Notre Dame's defense is for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who has that next group of defenses. I believe Georgia probably is the best defense in the country, but I have been really impressed with Arkansas's defense. Of course, Texas A&M is supposed to have a great defense. I don't know if it's great. It's still really good.
Good.
Notre Dame, Penn State, Wisconsin have good defenses. Clemson and Alabama, of course.
Yeah, I think the thing with Arkansas, and they cause problems because they basically drop 8 in coverage and only rush 3. And the thing about that is when you're able to get pressure with just 3, I mean, that's just going to cause a world of problems. And so that's I think the big thing with Arkansas, and then why their defense has been so successful is they generate pressure with 3 and maybe bring a 4th every once in a while, but otherwise you're playing 8 and forcing teams to sustain long drives.
James lets us know that Notre Dame had 2 pick sixes in the last 3 minutes. Yeah, must have been what happened because I was like, how did this thing finish at 41-13?
Yeah.
This is typically for me, not that we can never criticize play calling, but I tend to hesitate criticizing play calling. I think it's one of the easiest things to do. Was there anything with the play calling that you thought was really off base?
Not really, but I just thought they should have run the ball more. And I think that's maybe the gripe. Instead of saying that, the play calling's bad, I think there were a couple things I was surprised about. I was surprised they weren't. One of the things that they did so successfully was kind of those option plays, little pitches to Anaya Smith and Isaiah Spiller and Devon Ache. We didn't see any of that today, and that's a play that creates big plays in the running game. I was surprised we didn't see more of that. When they were struggling, I was surprised we didn't see more Devon Ache and Spiller in the backfield together and kind of trying to create matchup problems that way. On the Spiller one, yeah, well, he got hit pretty good on that interception, and so he was out for a little bit there. But I would have kept feeding him after that long touchdown run. I thought the running game, and we'll have the quotes coming up on Gig'em 247 after the game, but Jimbo Fisher addressed that a little bit, that maybe they should have stuck with the run game and didn't. And I thought that was one area that I do have questions about in terms of play calling.
Had you been to the Cowboys Stadium before?
Yes, I have multiple times.
Okay.
I've been for state championship games and all that, and so it's a good place to watch a game.
Yeah, that scoreboard is something else. I would think that would distract me from keeping my eyes on the field.
Yeah, I think you have to guard against not watching the plays on the scoreboard. But yeah, I did actually only have one play today where I watched it on the scoreboard, and otherwise I was pretty good about that. So you do have to be careful though.
Nice. Yeah, it just seems like a palace. I haven't been there.
Yeah, it's worth a trip for sure.
Very good, very good. I don't see anything else showing up here on the live chat, and we know that you've been traveling and had a long day, Andrew. So unless there's anything else you want to add,
nope. We'll have you all covered, and we'll have recruiting updates coming up throughout the week, and it continues rolling, and you don't shut down the program because of one loss. So knew this was going to be a tough game, and A&M's got to bounce back, and they've got to respond, and I think that's the big thing everybody will be watching for next week. You can't let one week beat you twice. They got to turn the page to Mississippi State on Monday, and then get ready for that Alabama showdown in 2 weeks.
Everybody lock in on
Andrews. Because that will be the biggest game of the year. The Alabama game is for sure going to be the biggest game of the year. I know A&M's going to have a ton of recruits in town, and so just in terms of recruiting and putting up a good performance there, it's going to be big.
So everybody lock in on Andrew's work at Gig'em 247. We're going to let him hit the road. And of course, I'm going to join everybody after all the primetime games tonight. So we're at halftime of most of the games. We're going to let the games finish out, and I'll be back on in about 2 hours or so right here at the Voice of College Football for a big call-in show tonight. Hey, Andrew, it was great to see you. Thanks for stopping by and making this happen.
Absolutely.
We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon, all right?
Yep, absolutely. We'll see you. Okay. Drive safely. We'll see you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Again, everybody, I'll be back in about 90 minutes. So I'm tracking, of course, Michigan State, Nebraska, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Tennessee, Florida. I'll be watching the second half of all those games. Not that I can really say much about the first half because I've been here with Andrew and with all of you and setting up for this. But I'm going to lock in on the second half of all the primetime games. And we'll all be back here to take your calls tonight after the primetime games, and we will, of course, track the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. So we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.